We basically have to unlearn everything that we've been taught because we've been told who we are. Everything is spirit, everything. Whether you want to call a poltergeist, ghost, spirit, it's all consciousness. It is always the people in spirit coming through, whether it's guides, angels, ETs, higher beings, if you want to call them higher beings. They are always in control. It is their show. It's not mine, and it's not the person receiving the reading. One thing that I tell people is get rid of your fear. Get rid of fear about yourself, because a lot of people fear themselves. A lot of people fear their own power, their own personal power. And stop fearing the unknown, because there's nothing out there that's going to hurt you unless you believe that it will.
I'm Remy, and you're watching Down the Rabbit Hole, where we explore the hidden truth of the universe. Today, we journey beyond the veil into the realm of spirit communication and the mysteries of life after death. Our guest is Susanna Massari, a gifted medium, animal communicator, and a death doula who has spent her life exploring the unseen world. From early encounters with UFOs to profound experiences as shaman or with shaman in Peru, Susanna has walked the path of the mystic, unlocking the secrets of existence beyond our physical plane. Susanna, thank you so much for being here.
That was beautiful. Thank you. I'm honored to be here.
Susanna, let's start at the beginning. When did you first realize that you had the ability to communicate with the other side?
My experiences began when I was 9, and they were UFO experiences. And I had seen a light. It was a ball of light going over my home. And I grew up in Miami, so we had what's called jalousie windows. If I'm really dating myself with those kinds of windows, but they were kind of the rollout windows. They were slats and just opened and closed. And so I went from one side of the house to the other side of the house to follow it. There was no sound to it. We were not in the line of the Miami airport, and it was silent, and I just watched it disappear. And not long after that, I was now our home being in Miami, and it was our house was built on stilts. It was kind of modern for that time, and my parents had the floors laid with Cuban tile, so they were very large pieces of tile. And so I had tile in my bedroom, and I walked into my bedroom one morning, and there were like three little nuggets. They look like silver nuggets, like fool's gold, what they call fool's gold. Only it was silver, and they were small, and there were 3 of them, and they were all, right together in the center of the tile. And when I walked in, it just kind of caught my eye. And my first thought, I bent down and picked them up. And my first thought was, oh, the UFO people were here last night. And then from then, I was getting visitations from relatives that passed. And then from that, I started having a very prolific dream life and a lot of out-of-body experiences. And then through my teenage years and into my early 20s, I was having a lot of experiences of premonitions, just having a knowing about things. And it's just, my abilities have taken a lifetime of progression. And I'm still learning, and I'm still exploring, and I'm still raising my consciousness. It never ends. It's always a continual process, and so many other things have opened up for me, especially since the Peru trip and spending a couple of weeks with the shamans. And then there was another experience in 2006 where I traveled to Tuva, also called Tuva, which is on the most southern independent state of Russia. It's right on the borderline of Mongolia. And we spent about 3 weeks hiking and camping and traveling through their 3 sacred mountains and working with different shamans and going to shaman clinics. And that was just a trip of a lifetime. It was so enlightening, and it was so refreshing to be with people that, because in our travels, we traveled the steppes, and we were visiting people in their yurts and who herded cows and goats. And I mean, it was just amazing. We had an interpreter, but there was so much more to the communication that we had with the people there. It was on getting emotional about it. There was such an emotional connection and a spiritual connection. And it's so wonderful to get out of your own culture and to engross yourself into another culture. And you realize that we have so much in common with one another, and there's so much more to communication than language. And so my experiences there were just amazing, just truly amazing. And
Would you say that this trip helped you view the world from different lenses and helps you in a second time kind of break down your own lenses which were kind of filters to experience what is and what is on the spiritual side?
Yes. And mostly it was how, and I can only speak for myself, it was how I was perceived by another culture and having the gifts that I have. And I didn't give anyone readings or anything like that. But my energy was felt. And that was amazing. That was just truly amazing how accepting people were of me and of the whole group. And it was just an eye opener. And we were there during a time when they were having their own 4th of July. It was during the month of August. And so we were there for their celebrations, and people came from all over Tuva, and the people from wrestlers from Mongolia came. And so we were in this outside arena, and we were watching the Tuvans and the Mongolians have their wrestling matches, which there was no holds barred.
Right of this.
It was truly amazing.
I'd love for you to go back to the earlier days of your awakening, or the awakening of your spiritual gifts. I'm curious, how did you make sense of those? So all of the sudden, you're very young, 9 years old, and you experience things that many people would consider not being normal. I'm curious, how did you make sense of that?
I thought it was normal. I thought it was normal. I thought everybody could do what I was doing. And so I openly talked about it. I openly talked about seeing, energy and spirits and dreams and being out of body. And nobody ever told me I was crazy or anything. They might have talked behind my back. Who knows? But I felt free enough to talk about it because I thought everybody experienced the same thing. And so during my 20s, I became a single parent, close to 30. And so then my whole life and focus was about raising my child. And I ended up moving to back to Florida. And then I got a corporate job. I worked for FedEx. I was a driver for FedEx for 17 years. And then I went into the office and was in customer service for a very long time, and stayed with them after I retired, and came back and worked as a casual. And so during this time, my focus was on that. And my focus was not on metaphysics or spirituality or anything. I still continued to have experiences, but they were my experiences, and I didn't usually talk about them unless it involved someone else, and then I would talk about it. And then John Edward came on the scene with his show, Crossing Over with John Edward, on the We Channel, and came on in the afternoon. So my shift didn't start until it was in the morning, and my shift started in the afternoon. Anyway, I had time to watch it, and I was just amazed that mediumship was coming in to be mainstream and open. And thought, man, this is crazy. This is really wonderful. And then there was one day I was getting ready for work, and I was like, I could do that. I'm already doing it. I could really do that and help other people. And so
when you mentioned that you were already doing it, how did you experience it, and how did you merge those abilities with your day-to-day life of working for FedEx, and how did that manifest in your daily life?
I'd have spirits stand next to me in bed at night. I would get premonitions. There was a girlfriend that I was friends with in elementary school, and we just dropped off, and I lost communication with her. And for a year, I had every week, on the same day, every week, I had a dream about finding her, and I would be traveling all over the United States looking for her. And after a year, I gave myself the suggestion before I went to sleep that night that I knew I was going to have another dream to find where she was. And then I had a dream about a mutual friend that we had that still lived in Miami, and that she knew where this person was. And so I made a trip to Miami, and luckily the girl was still living with her parents in the same house. And she gave me contact information for this girl. I got in touch with her, and we hung out a couple of times. She was living in Florida. She traveled up to see me, and I traveled to see her. And then it just stopped. And I've lost communication with her. So that dream, because she was my best friend in 6th grade, and I knew her all through junior high and senior high, it was trying to find her was to bring that relationship full circle so it could come to an end the way it was supposed to come to an end.
I'm curious if you had any challenges integrating those new abilities when you were younger and throughout your youth. What were some of the challenges that you faced?
When I read John Edward, when I read his first book, he had a list of people that he recommended, and there was someone in Florida. And so I went to take mediumship classes just to make sure I wasn't crazy, that I was seeing what I was seeing. I was, I believed wholeheartedly in my dreams, that my dream life is so much a part of me. And so I didn't have any problems there at all, but I just, in feeling energy because energy will present itself in so many different ways. And being a medium, I've had to learn how to feel and not necessarily interpret, but understand. That's the word I'm looking for, is not only feel the different energies, but to understand that energy. And when people come through in mediumship, I get all kinds of different energy from them. And so that was the first thing. And the second thing was, if I was going to do this professionally, because I've been doing this now for 21 years, something like that, professionally. And learning symbols that people in spirit give me, that was a great learning experience. The energy was a great learning experience. And it took me the greatest thing that I had to learn was that when I was doing a reading, if there was no communication, that is communication. So let me explain. I had a reading with a woman. I usually sit for maybe 15 minutes before someone comes in, and I just invite their relatives, their friends, their pets to come through, any guides, higher beings, ETs, to come through and give me information for her, for this particular woman, and what she needed to hear that day that would help her and her life. And her father came through while I was sitting there, and he was just, chatty Cathy. And then when she came in and I started the reading, there was silence. It was, what do I do now? Are you going to hang me out on a limb? What's going on? And it was like, all right, don't panic. Just come at this a different way. And so I said, look, let's try something different. Let me put you through a relaxation technique, and I will put you deeper and deeper into relaxation. And then I will take you on a journey to an island, and we'll see who shows up for you. And I always have to make sure when I do something like that to ask the person if they get motion sick. And because then I won't put them on a train, I won't put them on a boat. So, so she was fine. I put her on a boat and had her go to an island. I'm kind of condensing this, put her on an island. And when she walked up the ramp, the wooden ramp up to the island, who is that waiting for you? And she said, her father. And this woman has undeveloped mediumship and channeling abilities. She has chosen not to develop them, but she has them. So she was able to communicate with her dad, and very well. And she asked questions that she really needed to have a direct answer to, not through me. She needed a direct answer. And so when that was accomplished, then he brought me into it. So it was the three of us. And so whenever I don't get any information, I am getting information, and they're telling me that I need to go in a different direction than I usually do with people. And so it is always the people in spirit coming through, whether it's guides, angels, ETs, higher beings, if you want to call them higher beings. They are always in control. It is their show. It's not mine, and it's not the person receiving the reading. It's their show. They know what and I don't mean to sound cold about this, my client, or what's also called the sitter, needs to hear. They may not get what they want to hear, but they will get what they need to hear at that particular moment in their life. And
I'm curious if you have one example on this one where the person wanted to hear something and they got something different. Because it's quite interesting.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Do you have an example that comes to mind?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because this woman got very mad at me and was yelling at me. And she had been a victim of...
So not the same woman, right? Not the one on the island.
Different woman.
Else.
Different woman. Okay. And I don't know how freely I can talk if I need to talk in code, but she had an inappropriate relation.
I think you can go ahead.
Okay. She was sexually abused by her father.
Okay. Okay.
And he came through with...
And she knew about this or no, she didn't?
What, that her father was coming through?
No, that she had been molested in her younger years. Okay.
Yeah. So he came through, and it was with great remorse, um, huge apologies. And then he went on to explain to her that, let me back up a little bit, because I believe in reincarnation. I believe that we have cycles of reincarnation. So it's like, I've heard someone explain it like a cluster of grapes. And so just think of a cluster of lives like a cluster of grapes that we travel with the same family members during this
Mm-hmm.
cycle, and we play different roles for each other. And
Mm-hmm.
it's all for spiritual evolvement of the soul. And for us to learn about ourselves. And so she had been in this cycle of reincarnational lives with her family, where they played different roles for each other. And he was explaining that it was a great sacrifice for him because, excuse me, I'm getting emotional about this too. Um, that he came into that life to play that role for her, and it was very painful for him as a soul to do that. It was like a sacrifice for him to do that. But this was an agreement that the two of them had pre-birth for both of them. And she just would not have it and said, I would never choose this. Well, of course, consciously being in this life, no, none of us consciously choose
Mm-hmm.
traumatic events.
But why would a soul decide to have this experience?
It's, and there's so many different reasons. There's so many different reasons, but it's very personal and intimate for each soul. Uh, so many of us, and I include myself in this, have come from very harsh circumstances. And whether it was physical, emotional, and mental abuse, or it was sexual abuse, what gets ripped away, what gets torn away, is our whole. Sorry,
Sounds hard. Take your time.
it, it's okay. um, because I've learned so much from my own experiences, but I feel so much for other people and what they go through. And um, what gets stripped away is every bit of sense of self, every bit of self-esteem, every bit of self-worth. And so much damage is done to so many people. It doesn't have to be that way. We don't have to suffer. We're not here to suffer. But we are here to learn more about ourselves, to become more of ourselves, to have these challenges in life, to become whole. And so many people are not. And the readings that I do for people is every medium works differently. I work on a purely emotional level. I cannot tell someone, what their loved one said to them on their deathbed, but they might come through and give me how they felt or give me their death experience to pass on and what it was like for them. But so many people are in pain right now. And going in and going into our inner selves, in our inner wilderness, in our inner landscape is the only way, only way that we evolve and raise our consciousness. We have to feel the pain. And we
So
have
you
to,
mean it's really a way for us to experience and to grow as a soul. And I guess the experience from our point of view is very different from the experience from the soul's point of view, where they are infinite and eternal, and one life is a blink of a second. And so to us, it feels very strange to make that decision. But I guess for souls, it's not such a big deal. Not to minimize anyone's experience.
No, we don't. We're here. We are here in this three-dimensional reality. We are organic. We're biological. And we have been born within us a sense of spirituality, a sense of questioning, who are we? And looking for more, and searching for spirituality. And why am I here? What am I doing here? I don't want to be here. Many times I thought, get me out of here. Please. But we are here for the duration. We are here to grow. We are here to understand ourselves in a much deeper way, understand our own greatness. And this has nothing to do with religion. This greatness that we have, this greatness within us, is all wrapped around understanding our emotions and accepting emotions and accepting our intuition and our instincts. And we've been taught not to trust ourselves. We have been taught not to. And when someone embarks on changing and raising their consciousness and evolving, we basically have to unlearn everything that we've been taught, because we've been told who we are. And you have to become really what you are. You have to explore your belief systems. You have to explore your prejudices and your judgments and how you judge yourself.
One thing that we learn that we learn in the West, that is that there is one life, YOLO, you live only once, that there is nothing after death. I'm curious, what is your understanding today of what happens when we die?
One of the reasons I went into being a doula, and I worked with hospice.
And what is doula for those in the audience who are not familiar with the term?
Doula. It's the opposite of a birth doula. It is someone who will accompany you through an illness, through death. A doula can help you get all of your paperwork together. Do not resuscitate forms. And just so everybody knows, at least in the state of Florida, I think this is nationwide, the do not resuscitate form needs to be signed for by a doctor. It needs to be on a yellow form. And if you are ill, put it on your refrigerator. Because if the EMTs come to your house in an emergency, somebody calls 911 in an emergency, if that is not readily available, they will do every life-saving measure that they can. Nobody's going to wait for you to get it out of the files. I'm sorry?
Is that not a good thing that they try to save you?
If you've decided on do not resuscitate, then you know that you are close to death if you're terminally ill. But a lot of times there are people in the family who panic. If you have an in-home nurse who is not trained as a doula or end-of-life companion, or had that medical training, or had the experience being a seasoned nurse, someone might panic and call 911 and save their life. That person doesn't want their life saved if they have a do not resuscitate. And
It's true that oftentimes in our culture, and it happens to pretty around me quite a bit, is we feel the drive to, since we think there's just one life, we feel the duty of doing everything we can to prolong someone's life, even though sometimes it means prolonging a few months, and it's not great months because the person is just suffering.
Right.
Now, looping back to the question, what do you think happens when we die?
All right. Everyone dies in their own way. And a lot of the way we die, physically, the way we die, is a lot of it is wrapped up in our belief systems about death. There was one woman at a nursing home who she had transitioned into the last few hours, the last day of her death, or her life. And I was there twice. I was in there in the morning for 4 hours and came back in the evening for 4 hours. When I saw her in the morning, she had been resisting and flailing and trying to get out of bed and fighting and nonstop. And it didn't matter how much medication they gave her, anti-anxiety medication, morphine, nothing seemed to faze her. She was fighting. She wanted to get out of bed. When I came that evening, she had calmed down quite a bit. She was still trying to get out of bed. But then within the last 2 hours of her life, she calmed down, and it was like she just allowed what was happening to her happen. The communication afterward, after she passed, was that was her belief, that she was brought up to believe that she needed to fight death. And that was in her belief system. And so that's what she acted out in her final hours, in her final day. Now, a lot of people believe that we float out of the body or that we come out of the crown chakra. I don't necessarily believe that. We just, in my experience, so I can't talk about anyone else's experience. In my experience, people just find themselves outside of their body. I have never seen anyone float out. It's just a myth that people, to me, come out of their crown chakra. People may say that they've seen this, felt it. That's their experience. And my experience has been totally different. People just find themselves. It's like walking in from one room into another. I had a woman who was in and out of her body the whole day that I was with her. And I would see her on the side of the bed, and then she'd be back in her body, and then she'd be out of her body. And she was just getting herself acclimated to being within the body. And so she was in and out all day long. And that experience is I've had two, what's called shared crossing. Two shared crossings where the person who is dying will take another person along with them. And I don't mean
who's not dead, who is very alive.
It's like a feeling or a vision. I had a vision. And when this beautiful woman who just was, she was just so sweet and had Alzheimer's. I found out after my first visit that she was deaf. She never had a lot of money, so she never wanted to spend money on hearing aids. And so she learned how to read lips. So when I went in there, she was reading my lips. I thought she understood everything. She did understand everything I said. And she kept kissing my hand, and then she would blow kisses to me as I was leaving, and I'd blow kisses back to her.
Mm-hmm.
And she was just such a lovely, lovely, kind person. Here we go again. And because this this is what's important in life. This is the connections that we make, these deep connections that we make with people. I had just been with her a couple of times. I had been with her that day. And this lovely woman took me with her when she finally left her body. And she had had terrible problems with her knees, with her back. She was deaf. Her hair was thin. Her body, she was just thin as a toothpick and contorted. And she had had a hard life. And so all of a sudden it was like an out of body experience. It was not only a vision,
Mm-hmm.
but it was like an out of body experience. And all of a sudden we were in this beautiful field. It was, and colors, the colors are so vibrant and nothing like we have here on earth. It's so vibrant. And the yellows and the greens, and there was this huge mountain in the background. And I knew her father was waiting for her. I did not see him. I just felt him. I knew he was there waiting for her. When she brought me into that, she was running through this field of flowers. But when she was running, you would leave a trail. There's no trail. There was no flower that was harmed. Nothing was harmed. She had reverted back to 12 years old. And I knew immediately she did that because at 12, there were no life responsibilities. She was healthy. She had beautiful long brown hair. She was free and she was happy. And um, that's one of the most beautiful experiences that I've ever had. It is
Mm.
such an honor and privilege to be with the dying. It is, if you can look at it this way, if you can get rid of all of your judgments or all of your beliefs about death and about dying, it is such a profound and beautiful experience. And it is an honor and a privilege to be with someone.
Now, where do you think we go when we die? So you
All
mentioned
right.
she was 12 years old. She was running in the field. Then my very 3D brain is like, okay, now what? What does she do?
Okay.
Where does she go? And what
Okay.
happens?
In my experience and what I've been shown and what I've been told by people that come through in readings, and what I know for myself, for being
Mm-hmm.
a lifetime um, person who has evolved, is that we create our own reality. We create our own reality here. That's really hard for a lot of people to understand and to accept. Um, it, we're getting there slowly but surely. It is the same when we cross over. There are so many dimensions and so many realities that we can choose where we go. May I give you another example?
Sure.
Okay. I did a reading for a woman whose son had passed away. And he came through and he was showing me to tell her that he had this beautiful new dirt bike, and that he was riding this dirt bike, and he was uh, uh, hiking and using the dirt bike to climb mountains, and he was traveling and he was doing all kinds of stuff. Now, when we pass, we are in spirit form and we can create any reality that we want to. We can create realities that is just as real as what we experience here. But there's no time. There's no pain. There's no judgment. What you will find is complete love, acceptance, and peace. And you will become your true self, your larger self, your greater self, which is think of it as a pie. We are only one slice of the pie living here in this reality. When we die, we will understand ourselves in a much greater way. So I'm telling this woman, and she's like shaking her head, no, no, no. And I'm going, yes, yes. This is what he's showing me. I trust what he's showing me. And she said he would never do that. And I said, why would he never do that? And she said, because he was wheelchair bound his whole life. And I said, well, he's showing you that he's free and he's doing the things that he was never able to do in life. He wants you to know that he's happy and at peace. And so sometimes there's a disconnect, that people try to keep their loved ones or their friends in a box, in a conception of and perception of that they still hold on to. And so there's really not an understanding. I had another woman who came to me, and I've had several people, very devout religious people, come to me as a last resort because they don't know what to do with their grief. And this one woman came to me, and at first I was getting no information. I was getting nothing. Nobody was coming through. I knew her mother was there. I mean, her daughter who had passed. I knew her daughter was there, but I was getting nothing. And it was like, oh, no, not yet. This was early on.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just about to reschedule her when her daughter came through. And I gave this woman information. I didn't know her. I didn't know her daughter. And I gave information about who she was with on the other side, which was a relative who was into classic cars. And I said, she's with Uncle so-and-so, and they're tooling around in one of his vintage cars. And she was like, oh my God. And so the communication that her daughter came through and gave her peace and acceptance. And a friend of ours who had recommended me to her, she went to talk to him afterwards, and she said, did you tell her anything about me? And he said, I didn't tell her anything. And so she went through the reading with him, and he got back to me about a couple of months later, I would say, and he said she's a changed person. She's accepted, her daughter's death. She, the communication that you gave her, just took her out of 3 years of deep grief. Now, she had gone back and told some people in her ladies group, her women's group at the church, and told her, oh no, that's not true. That was a demon talking. You were being tricked. How? I brought her peace, and love that came directly from her daughter. I'm only a vessel.
I'm curious, do you think that it's literally what they experience on the other side? Or is it one manifestation and one visualization that they communicate to us because this is the only thing we can understand from all level? But the reality is probably that what they experience on this other level, where time doesn't exist, is very different and very
right.
difficult for us to understand. And so
yes.
What they want to try to communicate is that, yes, they are fine and there's nothing to worry about. And so they communicate and share symbols to first tell the person that, yes, this is true. And they have access to information that only they have. but also that they're fine and they're doing well.
Yeah, they're absolutely. And let me address if someone is an atheist and someone believes that this is the only life, this is it. There's nothing beyond. There was a woman that I had seen 3 times, and her husband came through every reading. And this was at a psychic fair. I was helping out some people locally at a psychic fair they had once a month. And he always gave reassurances to her. He died of alcoholism. And then the 3rd time the woman came in to see me, she was still concerned that he was stuck. And I reassured her he's not stuck. He's doing very well, as per the other 2 readings. And so when we got, when we got into doing the reading, he was explaining to her that because of his beliefs, because of being an atheist and believing that there was nothing, that's what he created for himself when he died, was nothingness. And he was in nothingness, and he showed it to me as being dark and dark nothingness until he realized, hey, I'm still alive. And then the moment that he realized he was showing me this, he was doing this in visions and pictures. And once he realized that he was alive, everything like opened up for him. And he was his true self. He was able to drop the personality that he had in physical life, because we do that. We hold on to it for a little while. But after I'm going to say time, because there is no time. After a while,
actually, it's a good point here. There's no time, but probably we create a vision, but we also recreate some kind of illusion of time to experience the process of slowly getting out of the ego and the individuality. Would you say that's right?
Well, we always have an ego. The ego, to me, is not an appendage that we need to get rid of, is not part of our consciousness we get rid of. It is a part of our consciousness. It's, I try to impart on people is to think of the ego as where you are at any moment emotionally. And if you're in an argument and you're out of control, or you have an unruly child and you're out of control, then emotionally you're more charged and you're more apt to want to control. And that's what we term ego. I mean, I use the word ego like everybody else, that person has a really big ego. But if we really dig down deep, it is where we are emotionally at that moment. But we always have an ego. That's part of our consciousness. We don't want to get rid of part of our consciousness. So that's, I in my book, I have a great deal to say about the ego. And, but yes, when we are in spirit form, we don't have that great of an attachment to what we call the ego in this reality. And because we have a greater understanding of ourselves. And people will find out we are ancient. We have no beginning and we have no end. We are. And we have always been. And we can have a life here in this reality. We can have a life in other realities, in other dimensions. We can have lives in between physical lives. It's a smorgasbord of what we want to create, really. You know, when we die, we can create whatever we want. And the source, our source, whether you want to call it God, the universe, source, creator, this energy is what gives everything life. It gives us life here. It gives this planet life. It gives us life in the afterlife. It gives us life in any dimension that we are in. And to me, that's what God is this energy. It is nature. To me, God is nature. And all of life is nature in whatever reality, whatever dimension that we are in. That energy is life.
It's actually a pretty good segue to one of the questions I had, mentioning all of the dimension that exist. I'm curious, what's your take on ghosts? Do you think ghosts are real? And if they are, what are they?
Oh, well, let me make it really simple. Everything is spirit. Everything. Whether you want to call a poltergeist, ghost, spirit, it's all consciousness. It's all consciousness. Yeah. I can guarantee you, when I die, I'm going to be haunting some people. But I'm going to do it in a loving and fun way. People misunderstand energy. They misunderstand their own energy. A lot of times when things happen in a house, especially when you have a large family and you have teenagers who are in puberty and energy is high and hormones are going, you can create your own, what do you want to call them, hauntings, or things breaking or things moving. We don't understand, because we don't understand our own energy. We have no idea really how strong we are, how powerful we are, and what we have been given the gift of creating. Life is a gift. This is a gift. My mediumship is a gift. And it's just all about life. So paranormal experiences. I used to go on investigations, and people were, people would just, spirits would just come to me, and it's either like, this is my house, and I come back here to visit every once in a while, and this is my home, I come back, or I just died, and this was a comfortable place for me, and I don't want to go yet. It doesn't mean they haven't crossed over. It doesn't mean that they're stuck. They have already crossed over. They already realized that they're dead. And they just, people, spirits like hanging out in familiar places, until they get ready to move on. I have never, ever had an experience with a negative spirit, demon, anything like that. I don't believe in demons, actually, myself. But, I just believe in
I
negative.
love that you mentioned that there's still a lot of dramatization around the topic, I think, and a lot of misunderstanding. I love that you mentioned that we don't understand that we are energy and that we can impact the energy around us. And so probably there is a big bucket in which we put everything and we dramatize everything. We put dramatic music on top of it.
Exactly.
But there is something real behind it, but it's not. I'd love to come back to your UFO experience because I think it's quite, actually you're one of the first person I discuss that's had their abilities turned on after a UFO experience. Actually, the second person. I had someone else on the channel that mentioned this as well. I'm curious if you have any remembering of what happened, why it happened, and why it had the impact that it had.
No, didn't really impact me because it just all felt normal. It just felt really normal. Now, I have
Do
had,
you mean the UFO experience?
yeah,
Do you remember?
yeah, it just felt normal. I just knew that we weren't alone. I, I just knew. And I knew that, not consciously, okay? This is like an emotional intelligence and inner intelligence, is that I knew that I was not from here. Nobody's from here. We're all just visitors here. Uh, we're uh, we're all from different places in the universe, and um, and I've had the ETs keep track of me throughout my entire life. When I was renting a house, they for a year, I stayed in this house a year. In my mind's eye, it was I could see them like parked up in the sky, like there was a UFO just parked in the sky. And whenever I was in that house, I always had the feeling I was being watched. And every time I left, I saw that UFO in my mind's eye up in the sky. When I moved out of that house and I bought my house, um, and I didn't find this out for 20, 20 years, maybe, that right after my son and I moved into our new home, he was, he was a teenager, and he was with a kid down the street. They were out at midnight, and we lived near a naval base, and they were out skateboarding, you know, in the driveway. And he told me like 20 years later, told me freaking 20 years later, that he and his friend saw a UFO go over our neighborhood, you know, all the different lights and everything. And then F-16s, three F-16s, I think they were, following it, chasing it. And he just nonchalantly told me that 20 years later. I was like, why didn't you tell me? Because it just validated for me that I was not crazy living in that other house, feeling like somebody was watching me all the time and seeing that UFO in my mind's eye up in the sky, parked. So that all made sense. And then when my husband Tom and I got together, after not seeing each other for 35 years, and when I went out to Arizona to visit him, the first night that we were back, we were hanging out in his bedroom. He had like a futon, and we were just lying there in the dark, and we were both just looking up, and we were on our backs looking up, and the window was closed, the blinds were closed, it was dark, and I started watching this pinpoint of a laser beam, and it traveled all around the room. It never shook like, you know, somebody were holding it. It just went around the room like they were monitoring the room. Like there was a laser going around and scoping out the room. It never varied. It went all around, every four corners, all around. And I said to Tom, I said, did you see that? He said, yeah. I said, okay. And so I closed my eyes. He kept his eyes open, and it happened a second time. And he got up, flipped on the light. We're standing in the middle of this futon bed, and I could see the air. I could see the energy in the air. It looked like tempered glass. It just looked like all these little cracks all through the air. And it was just energy. And it was energy from that. Now, my husband channels, and he's been channeling for 52 years now. And I asked his source, his name is Abram, and I asked Abram about that night. And I said, was there a UFO out there? And he said, yes. And I said, was it a probe? And he said, yes. And I said, was it a manned probe? And he said, yes. And so, and Thomas had many UFO experiences throughout his lifetime, far more than I have, and more direct. And so they have kept track of us throughout our lifetimes.
And I'm curious if you have an understanding of why that is. Why do you think it happens to you? My understanding is that it's happening to a lot of people. It's not happening to me, or not to my knowledge. I'm curious if you have any knowledge of what would be your relationship to them, and why they would be keeping track of you.
I think this is our ET family, and they are interested in our progress because Tom and I believe so deeply in what we're doing. This is our contribution to humanity, to help people raise their consciousness. We don't advertise. We both work by word of mouth, and we do things differently. We're very down to earth. We're very practical about what we do. We don't go off on conspiracy theories and woo-woo new agey stuff. The glitz and the glamour and the drama. That's not who we are. And we have a very deep connection. I have ETs now that come through in readings for people.
And do you tell people that it's ETs that are coming through?
I ask beforehand. I ask if they're open. And then I also ask if this person needs to hear from a higher being. And that's code for ETs. And I have a group a small group. There's like 4 that I know of that are working with me right now through automatic writing, and also conscious channeling. They're helping me develop conscious channeling. So a lot of times if information needs to come from them, I will conscious channel during a reading. And conscious channeling is very different than the way I usually do mediumship and interpreting symbols and things like that. And I don't have a set of symbols that I say, okay, you guys need to use these symbols. I leave it wide open. They give me the symbols. I just say, just give me simple symbols and things that I can interpret easily and to get your message across. So I leave it up to them. And so they're always, I like the freedom. I like the freedom of, I'm not placing any judgments. I'm just a vehicle. You use whatever symbols you need to use, and I will work with that. So I don't have any set rules like, certain colored flowers mean a certain thing. It keeps me on my toes too, because I'm always getting new symbols and new ways of how they express themselves. And so I have to be flexible and interpret.
And do you think anyone could learn those skills? Maybe not at the level that you have, or do you think you need something specific? I don't know, in the genes. So the question: can anyone learn to communicate with spirits or to get in touch with spirits, or is it specific to a few people? What can people do to get more in touch with spirits?
We are all born with all possibilities within us. And we're all born with intuition, instincts, mediumship, channeling abilities, and people can develop that. Now, the example I use in the book is that everyone can use a hammer, but not everyone's going to be a carpenter. So you can develop and you can have communications, but you may not be able to do what I do or what other mediums, seasoned mediums can do. And there's many good ones out there. And there's, I don't know about channels. I just stick with mediums. I know there's some very good ones out there. I don't pay attention to what other mediums do. I just pay attention to what I do and how I can evolve and how I can serve people. But yes, I have a friend who was not born a medium. Her talent is energy work and sound healing, but she has developed herself over the years, has developed herself enough where she picks up on communication from time to time. She was just had a sound healing with someone who worked with someone who had a farm who works with horses as therapy horses. And she had a communication with one of the horses. Her communications are very brief and they're not all the time. And so, yes, people can develop up to a certain point.
And what could one do to improve their intuitive abilities? If someone in the audience wanted to dig a little bit deeper and say, okay, it seems interesting, I'd like to take this a step further, what can someone do? Like, what are some small practices or overall theme that someone would want to explore?
The first thing I would recommend is meditation. I'm not a big meditator myself. I am what is considered active meditation, where I do a lot of yard work and gardening. And so when I'm out in the yard working in the yard, I'm in that zone. And so I do a lot of thinking and feeling. What I did for years is I would play games with myself. Like if I were expecting a delivery, I would try and pinpoint the time of delivery that day. And I would practice doing that. I would practice figuring out how long it might take me to get from point A to point B. Challenging myself in those ways and playing those little games of, okay, let's predict this, let's predict that. That's one thing a person can do. The other thing is when I do whatever hobby or anything that you are in, anything that puts you in the zone, is to feel. So when I go out and work in the yard and I'm cleaning up in spring and replanting if I need to, I feel the yard. Practice feeling your house. If you want to decorate, practice feeling your house because that is only an extension of you. Let the house speak to you. I allow my yard to speak to me. I open myself up and I feel my yard and I listen to what it has to say. Also with the critters that come in, the birds, the squirrels, cats that visit the yard. We have a feral cat that we take care of. When I buy a new plant, flower, I speak to the flower. Where would you like me to plant you? Where would you feel comfortable in the yard?
So the overall theme, if I understand correctly, is train yourself to get out of your head and connect with everything else, which is
emotionally
also learning to connect to other realms of existence.
Yes.
And I love that you mentioned emotions a little bit throughout the conversation, and it seems that emotion play a key part in how spirits communicate with us. Um,
Very key.
and probably also, I guess there's a strong link between the emotions we feel and spirits.
This is an emotional universe, and we are emotional beings. And so we always have our emotions. And going back to what I had said earlier about understanding our own greatness is understanding our emotions and having our emotions um, a full substance. Have your emotions be of deep substance, because you are deep. Everyone is deep, but people use the conscious mind, and like Carl Jung uh, called it, was the shadow. We need to take a look at our shadow parts. And so this is an emotional universe. We are emotional beings, and we try and shut down our emotions and use the ego as a barometer as to where you are. Where are you emotionally at any given point in time?
I wonder if there's one message that spirit world wanted or has shared in the past for you regarding humanity, and one advice that they have for humanity today. And when I say spirit world, it's pretty broad. As you mentioned, sometimes you connect with angels, sometimes you connect with ET, sometimes you connect with deceased one. And I guess they all have a different take on what is should be the main focus today. But what is the one thing that comes up right now?
The one thing that I tell people is get rid of your fear. Get rid of fear about yourself, because a lot of people fear themselves. A lot of people fear their own power, their own personal power. They fear that. They have a fear of success, fear of failure. Take a look at your fears and stop fearing the unknown, because there is nothing out there that's going to hurt you unless you believe that it will. And I'm not one for, doing the white bubble and protecting myself. I am my own protection. You are your own protection. You have a good sense of self. You have a good sense of self-esteem, and you know who you are. That's the protection. That's all the protection that you need. Nobody can do anything to you. This is your body. This is your soul. Period. Get rid of the fear. Understand yourself. Love yourself. A lot of people don't love themselves. Love yourself. Have self-love. Love who you are. Love that you actually know what you're doing. Your soul knows what it's doing. You are not separate. When you understand yourself, when you love others, when you love yourself, you are better equipped to understand other people. Yeah. Do I get pissed off at people? Sure. I don't have to go around loving everybody. I don't have to go skipping down the sidewalk, blowing kisses and throwing flowers at people. We don't need to do that. There are people you're not going to, your energy just does not mix well with. Understand that. Understand that when that happens. And it's okay not to be friends with someone or to let go of someone. But the more you love who you are and understand yourself, the more that you will be accepting of other people. And we're all in this together. We are all in this together. And we all come from the same thread. All of us. All come from the same thread. And love, compassion is not overrated. That's what we need. We need to, that's the only way to raise consciousness, is to learn to love who you are, and not the masks that you wear in front of people, not this this identity that isn't going to take you deeper into looking at yourself. Everyone is on their own journey, and we need to remember to respect other people's journey, but we also need to set our own boundaries and say, say what's acceptable and not acceptable. We're all in this together. We're not separate. And so people just need to realize that.
That's beautiful. Susanna, thank you so much for everything you shared today.
Thank you.
Where can people learn more about all of the great work that you've done and that you keep doing?
I am at www.mediumunplugged.com. Tom and I both have YouTube channels. You can look us up on YouTube. We're posting right now. We're posting like really short videos twice a week. May I show my book? You can find this on Amazon. It's Living Beyond Death. The tagline is Understanding Consciousness, Life Within Death, Creative Freedom, and the Limitless Expression of the Self in this world and worlds beyond.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for being here. And to everyone else, I'm Remy, and you're watching Down the Rabbit Hole. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, please consider leaving a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. And if you'd like to continue the journey, click on the video below.